Hello everyone. As you can probably tell, given how much my health has improved over the past couple of months, thanks primarily to the carnivore diet, I finally feel like I can think again. Unless you've been through it yourself, I'm not sure it's easy to describe just how debilitating it is when you have super high blood sugar. You would think that because your body typically uses sugar for energy, that it would mean that you would just be really energetic. You would have tons of energy. It would be hyper. But the exact opposite is what actually happens. Having high blood pressure is like having an anchor strapped to the middle of your brain that you have to drag around behind you wherever you go. Everything takes more effort. Everything, even the simplest things. A consequence of this has been that a lot of the things that I've wanted to talk about before, such as my series on logic that I was doing before, have kind of gone by the wayside. I mean, the reality of the situation is that in terms of YouTube, I know how to get views on my channel if that was my main goal. And it's not the videos that I actually enjoy making the most, which I can still do even when I have super low energy. It's all the math stuff. I mean, look at this. Every single video that's gotten more than 1,000 views on my channel is math related. I mean, except that one. And even that one was just kind of a weird experiment with a text-to-speech program set to some basic 4-chord Euro trash beat. Although I do think the poem that I wrote for it was better than most of the poems I write when I do lyrics for songs. Still, while it's my math videos that have gotten the most clicks, math's not what I really like to do most of my videos on. In fact, in general, I don't really like mathematics at all, by which I specifically mean doing the math, the calculating. That's just super boring to me. In fact, I put it to you this way. You don't even need to have a brain to do calculations. And how do I know that? Because this has no brain. And yet it can do calculations faster and more accurately than I can. Well, I mean, unless the calculator's programmed wrong. So yeah, I don't like math in that sense. But I do like math if you're talking about number theory, because the reality is I like logic, and math is related to science, or so I've heard. But math is actually just one way to describe one particular aspect of logic. So it's really that part of logic that I like. And with number theory, you're investigating things. You're not just trying to manipulate digits to come up with another value. You're actually thinking and using your brain and going, what's going on here? You're being Sherlock Holmes with a puzzle. And you're trying to find the pattern that drives the process to give you the results it gives. That, to me, is what's interesting, not what do you get when you multiply 17 by 37. I mean, I don't care. That's irrelevant to me. And this kind of ties into the point with the video I just made, talking about why I reject the label of conservative right now. Because thinking through something is important to me. Labels such as conservative are lazy, and they help you avoid thinking altogether. I don't want something spoon-fed to me with, here's a label, eat that. I want to actually think about the issues, wrestle with them mentally, come to conclusions. So I'm hoping with my channel to get back into some of that. And I wanted to start by examining the concept of labels here and why they don't matter, looking at it from another perspective altogether. I've mentioned before on my channel, but I haven't really gone in depth at all on the topic, but I am a Christian theist. Specifically, for anyone who cares, I hold to the Reformed traditions, which many people call Calvinism, after the French theologian John Calvin. In fact, I have here La Biblia de Estudio de la Reforma. Obviously a Reformation, but it's de la Reforma. And fun fact, just as an aside, I actually don't remember the last time I read the Bible in English, because I've been reading it in Spanish now that I know enough of Spanish to comprehend it through the Bible. So yes, KJV only activists, it's still the Word of God, even in Espanol. But as much fun as it would be to talk about the label Calvinism that is applied here, that's not actually the topic that I'm interested in for this video here. Instead, I'm just bringing this up to point out the more basic label that I am a theist. And I remember, I want to say it was around 2008 or so, when Richard Dawkins was gaining a lot of notoriety with the God delusion. And that was when the new atheists were just bursting out onto the scene, lots of popularity. Christopher Hitchens, all of those people making lots of waves. And during that time, there was this concept of the flying spaghetti monster that came out there. And the flying spaghetti monster was supposed to function as an alternative to God. And I was reminded of this recently, which is why I'm bringing it up here, because I don't remember exactly who I was watching. I think it was Jeremy from The Quartering, who, if I recall correctly, said something along the lines of, whatever flying spaghetti monster you hold to in one of his videos, something like that, if I recall. But that label is the one I want to talk about for this video, because what atheists or agnostics who are using this term typically are trying to do is to propose some kind of equivalency between a fictitious entity that everyone knows and acknowledges is fictional. I mean, no one believes the flying spaghetti monster exists. No one does. And they want to compare that with the belief in the deity, which many people, far more people, in fact, do believe in some form of deity than are atheists. I think the last measurement I saw was something like 94% of people on Earth were some form of theists. So this substitution that is being used by the anti-theists, and I use that term specifically describing the new atheists, not the people who are just agnostic or atheists, but they don't care what you believe. I'm talking about those who are actually using this as a quote-unquote argument. That what they're trying to do is that whenever a theist says something is done by God, this anti-theist will say, no, it's the flying spaghetti monster. And since the flying spaghetti monster is fictional, the implication is that so too is God. That is to say, if you can substitute the label flying spaghetti monster into an argument and it works, then clearly whatever is meant by God isn't even needed for that argument. So by the same act of substituting a valueless label for one that theists hold to, the entire concept of theism is supposed to be undermined by that. And it occurs to me that this entire concept of substituting in one label for another is kind of an interesting way of dealing with substitutionary atonement, but that's a different talk altogether. This substitution of meaning is the entire purpose of that label. It has no purpose beyond being used for that argument. Again, no one believes in this flying spaghetti monster. No one does. So there's no content to this label other than if it's used to undermine theism. It's just a rhetorical ploy. So it only works if the label flying spaghetti monster is completely valueless. Whatever you want to ontologically attribute to the flying spaghetti monster must stay nebulous and fictional in order for it to work as a substitution against theism, if the reason for the substitution is to have any merit for the anti-theist. So as such, flying spaghetti monster must remain undefined. The thing is, the word God is not undefined. Now, obviously, different religions will ascribe different attributes to God. I'm not here to defend all concepts of God because I do not believe all concepts of God are true or valid. Instead, I'm going to be talking about a definition of theism that is consistent with Christianity, Judeo-Christianity in general, because that's what I hold to, is Christianity. Anyone who believes in other religions is free to incorporate whatever aspects of this that they wish, because my point isn't to prove Christianity here at all. It's to demonstrate that the label substitution trick is a fallacy from a purely logical standpoint. So let's just give a quick example. In Christianity, we say that God is eternal and omnipresent, which in today's modern scientific parlance would be equivalent to saying God transcends space-time. It's basically the same principles involved. And likewise, a Christian theist would argue that God is omniscient, He knows all that's possible to be known. He's unchanging in his nature. He's immutable. He's the creator of everything that exists within the universe. And particularly if you're a Calvinist like me, he's sovereign over how the universe functions. So if an anti-theist were to respond, all of that is also true of the flying spaghetti monster, then the flying spaghetti monster has taken on actual attributes. The label is no longer a blank label that can be substituted in without consequence. Now, if you're going to substitute the label flying spaghetti monster for God, you're including within that label the concept of transcending space-time, of omniscience, of being the creator of all things, and of being sovereign over all of the universe. This automatically disqualifies the flying spaghetti monster for substituting certain kinds of religious views out there, such as those who think God is localized in one place, not omnipresent, or that there are many gods in the universe, not just one, or that God doesn't even know what your free will choices are going to be until you make them. In other words, this completely overthrows the entire point of using the label flying spaghetti monster in the first place, because we're supposed to be replacing God with a complete blank slate in order to trivialize the position of the theist. But if the flying spaghetti monster has to have the same exact attributes that God does, then what difference does it make if you call God God or if you call God the flying spaghetti monster? The label itself has no power itself. It's the attributes that are referenced by the label that matter. And if the attributes you must assign to the concept of flying spaghetti monster are identical to those that are assigned to God, then simply using the term flying spaghetti monster does you absolutely no good at trying to refute a position. It's literally no different than saying that Dios is another name for God in a different language. Put it this way, A is A, even if you call A zebra, so long as every attribute of A is identical to every attribute of a zebra. In the same way, God is God, even if you call God the flying spaghetti monster. Labels, again, are only worthwhile insofar as they point out the attributes of the thing they are referencing. If the attributes are identical, the labels are indistinguishable. They are synonyms of each other. So anyway, I do hope to have more videos such as these in the future now that I'm feeling better overall in general. But I'm not going to make any promises. Life, it seems, will find a way of being different from the plans that you want them to be, Malcolm. But I do hope that all of you have a wonderful day.